Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres, talking live from Barcelona. Thanks for joining us again. Thanks to our probably by now 12,000 LinkedIn followers, over 4,000 listeners a month. So it's great to be creating this, call it movement, if you like, around FMCG and retail after 2 and a bit years. So today, very excited about the topic we're going to talk about, which is super relevant to the current FMCG scenario in Europe, which is the state of affairs between FMCGs and retailers. We've heard big news headlines, if you like, about disencounters between retailers and FMCGs. We know about the pricing wars. We know about inflation. We know about buying groups, but we want to know more. So very excited about 2 things. One will be our guest, which I'll introduce shortly. But secondly, is my co-host for the day, which is not Efrain, not Christina, but David Sloff. Hi, David. Thanks for joining. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Doing well, thanks. Doing well.
So, David, I hope you're not too nervous. I know it's the first time you do this, but I'll make it easy for you. I will make some funny faces every now and then, so to make you laugh, but that's about it.
Okay, thanks for that. And indeed, first timer for me, but very happy to be on the show and to do this together with Jacques, who I know from the past few years. So looking forward to it.
And obviously, you didn't pick someone random from the street. Actually, David has a very interesting background in FMCG. So maybe you can tell a bit the audience about yourself to give them a bit of context. And obviously, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile on the show notes so that people can actually have a first look at you if they want to.
Sure. Yeah. I think by now I've worked for 15 years in FMCG with companies with the likes of P&G, where I spent 12 and a half years in a variety of marketing, sales, strategy roles, either in market or from the European HQ. I lived in Geneva for 4 years, and Diageo. And my most recent role there, I was heading up the Northern Europe region from a commercial point of view, a region that consists of 11 markets, Germany at the center of it, and then everything that basically surrounds it. And what I've said, I've worked in a variety of roles. I think a common thread throughout my roles has been e-commerce. For example, for P&G, I've worked on the Amazon account from Geneva.
Yeah, and other than that, you've also worked with a lot of big European retailers. So what is your take on, but I'm seeing it a bit from the fences, right? Like what I read in the news, what people tell me about, but you've seen it from the first line. Now, what's your take about like the relationship between FMCGs and retailers in Europe in the last few years?
Well, I mean, that's a big question. I mean, there's many angles to answer that, but what you see, and I think we're going to discuss that a bit more, is that the retail landscape in Europe has been consolidating, has been becoming more border agnostic. You see some players that clearly take a European approach, and I've mentioned that I've worked on Amazon. Amazon does that very well, but we also know Aldi, Lidl, and we've seen recent developments. I think even this week. We've seen, which is more relevant for the French landscape, but a recent development where Casino has received approval for their restructuring plans, which involve the divestiture of some of their super and hypermarkets. So a lot is going on, and obviously that impacts the relationship with the suppliers, which maybe if you take a step back 10 years or 15 years has been very market specific, country specific, and that has clearly changed. Every decision you take in a market, especially the key markets in Europe, you need to take into account that can have a very significant effect on your further European relationship with retailers. Yeah.
So to talk this through and more in depth, we have someone that's, I think, well known in the European FMCG scenario. His name is Jacques Van Cauwenberge. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Hi, Daniel. Doing very well. Thank you very much.
Excellent, and good to have you here. Heard good things about.
Great to have me.
Heard good things about you. So keen to learn more. But maybe you can tell us a bit about your background and the why of your reputation in the industry.
Thanks, Daniel, and thank you for having me. My name is Jacques Van Cauwenberge. I'm Belgian. And since 2 years now, I have my own consultancy company, a small company, which is specialized in international commercial strategy, working for FMCG clients. That's for a little over 2 years now. Before that, I worked at the Coca-Cola company for 24 years. So I've been in FMCG for 24 years. And the last 6 years at Coca-Cola company, I was Chief Customer Officer in Europe, leading the global customer management for all European customers, both in retail and on-premise or away from home. And before Coke, I worked at Exxon, Esso at the time, for 11 years. And always in the retail part of the business.
Great. So let's go into the discussion. I think that, David, you had a first question to kick off the discussion. So let's go right into this tectonic shift between retailers and FMCGs in Europe.
Yeah, sure. So today we're going to talk about value creation. And the idea is that we will place this in the context of that consolidating and more border agnostic European retailer landscape. And to kick that off, Jacques, can you elaborate a bit on those changes? What has happened in recent years and what challenges the retailers face in this evolving landscape?
Yeah, certainly, David. And you put it right. The retailers and the retail industry has been facing very significant challenges over the past years. Challenges that, to a large extent, were following a significant change in the shopping behavior of consumers, the shopping behavior of people. And the situation has been particularly challenging, I would say, for European retailers that historically invested quite heavily in large networks of large stores, large supermarkets, and large hypermarkets.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about like the changes in shopper behaviors, what changes are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, I think when you look back 5 to 10 years, I think we can agree that the shopping behavior has changed massively over that period of time. And if we simplify a bit or generalize a bit, we've all seen that there's been a movement, if you will, away from the weekly large grocery shopping trip towards the direction of multiple smaller shopping trips happening in a variety of stores, in a variety of channels, something we call multi-channel today. Shopper loyalty has declined over the years, and we saw strong growth as a result of that, of some particular channels, in particular convenience shopping in its different formats, whether it's convenience stores, or e-commerce for that matter, and a strong focus on value convenience through what we sometimes call discounters, but I think in the eyes of the people who shop there, they're just convenient places to shop where you get good value. So this convenience has played an important role and a significant shift, in fact, in the whole retail industry.
Mm-hmm. And how has that impacted like retailers, like the more traditional supermarket, grocery chains?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the impact of that was massive, of course. First of all, these retailers who had these and have these vast networks of large stores needed to make sure that the shoppers continued to come to their stores. So they had to invest significantly in making sure that these stores remained relevant to their shoppers, making sure that the offers within their stores remained relevant within an increasingly competitive environment. So that required lots of money from the retailers. And at the same time, they needed to find money to invest in these new formats that we were talking about. They needed to develop e-commerce. They needed to invest in developing convenience stores, different formats. So all of this required very significant investments from the retailers, and all of that put a lot of pressure on their P&Ls.
Going through digital transformation is hard and expensive. ChatGPT-like solutions automate and speed up almost everything. AI will replace all of our jobs soon. Are these statements all true, or just the newest myths? Meet the SoftServe Business Systems team. SoftServe Business Systems have been helping FMCG businesses worldwide to find the truth in a complicated tech environment for over 20 years now. By applying an exclusive digital transformation framework and offering a single, fully integrated AI-driven ecosystem of solutions, they know precisely what, when, and how to make technologies benefit your business. SoftServe Business Systems, mythbusters of the FMCG world.
Clear. And Jacques, if you look at that development and the necessity for retailers to make investments with the likes of what you just mentioned, how have they translated that into a shift in strategy or a shift in approach towards their relationship with FMCG suppliers?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like any company, retailers needed to, in that situation, they needed to protect their P&L. And so, like any company, what you do then is you need to look at your cost. You need to find ways to cut your cost. You need to find ways to generate incremental income, basically to cope with the financial challenges. And that's what retailers did as well. And one of the consequences on FMCG companies, on suppliers, was that retailers were requesting more money from their suppliers to help them get through this situation, and that led to negotiations that became tougher and tougher. And as you mentioned, David, in your introduction, some retailers joined forces to strengthen their negotiation position versus some of the larger suppliers. And this consolidation of procurement, we saw this happening, and we've seen this happening for many years at different levels, at European level, but also at regional level, as well as at country level. So different levels of procurement consolidation.
Yeah. Can you give some examples, just one or two, just for us to get a glimpse?
Absolutely. I mean, the people on the call will certainly be familiar with some of the international buying groups. I think Daniel referred to them in his introduction. Companies like Agicor that were created many years ago that today are grouping interests of companies like Colruyt in Belgium, like Conad in Italy, Coop in Switzerland, and Eroski in Spain. That has been around for several years. Copernic is another example, has been around for many years as well. Epic Partners is a more recent phenomenon that happened, I believe, 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And there's also grouping several big retailers of different countries. You also have this at the local level. You have local initiatives in different markets. There's companies like Envergure in France that where retailers are working together to join forces in procurement. So it really happens at different levels.
And have these efforts to generate efficiencies, have more buying power from the retailers, have they been successful in making them more profitable, for example?
Yeah, that's a good question. Listen, the retailers' actions here, I think, are certainly understandable, given the financial difficulties or challenges that they were having, as we were saying. So, on one hand, for sure, all these efforts and the consolidation of procurement has resulted in significant extra funding for the retailers, and so it really exposed also some suppliers that perhaps did not have their trade architecture really in order. So on one hand, yes, you can say it's been very successful. However, on the other hand, you also must say that in spite of many years of this happening, many years of procurement consolidation, we're just talking about some examples that have been around for probably 10 years, something like that. So in spite of that, and in spite of a massive value transfer that happened from suppliers to retailers, we kind of need to observe today that the financial situation of many retailers has not really improved. So whilst this consolidation efforts by retailers is certainly understandable, it hasn't really, or it doesn't seem to have brought a sustainable solution to some of the challenges that they've been facing.
You mentioned the trade architecture, Jacques. So it has exposed some FMCG suppliers that might not have that in order, or might not have thought that through with the level of accuracy or diligence that it requires in this landscape. Could you elaborate a bit more on what that means, trade architecture?
Yeah, well, what that means is that typically many suppliers, as retailers, would have a country by country approach, and would develop trade terms. Trade terms means, the contract that you have with your customer, be it a retail customer or on-premise customer, where you will invest money, what you will pay for, what you will not pay for, et cetera, et cetera. That was typically done on a country by country basis because of the specifics of every market. The consumer is different. The consumer dynamics are different. The category, the size of the category, the dynamics of the category. So there's many, many things different that explain why suppliers would do this on a country by country basis. However, in some cases, and certainly when you're dealing with a customer that works across multiple countries, you have to be consistent in what you do. When you say I really want to invest behind this type of initiative, then it's difficult for the customer to hear in another country that you are not willing to invest behind these type of initiatives. So these type of inconsistencies obviously surfaced. And retailers, rightfully so, were challenging suppliers and saying, I don't really understand what you're doing. You're saying you don't want to do this here, but you do this in another country. So why is that? So that's been something that's been exposed, and I think rightfully so, and has, I think, improved the situation for all parties.
Yeah. You've also mentioned that this is not a truly new thing. It has been going on for at least 10 years. It has accelerated in recent years. But that does raise the question, where is this heading towards? And is this a sustainable development for all parties involved?
Yeah, that's true, David. As we said, this consolidation has been going on for many years, probably 10 years or even more in Europe. But today we see a rising number of conflicts between manufacturers and retailers, and this is a rather recent phenomenon. So by that, it would seem, I would say, that the model is kind of reaching its limits. And it's not surprising. I mean, we all know that cost cutting, whilst necessary, is an ending game at the end of the day. There is a limit to how much cost you can cut. And so at a given point in time, you need to switch back to a growth agenda. You need to drive back growth into your business. So coming back to an organic growth with healthy margins for both the retailer and the supplier, in my opinion, is the only sustainable solution for both retailers and suppliers. I think both need to win. It's not one winning and the other losing, which again is an ending game.
Mm-hmm. And I heard a point of view the other day, Jacques, that I wanted to share with you because I thought it was interesting. I was in Paris for some meetings and somebody told me that the supermarket chains that are privately owned have an upper hand versus the ones that are public, because the public ones have to deliver a certain margin to their shareholders that the private ones don't. And when we're talking about like the low margins that retailers have, that puts a lot of pressure on the ones that are publicly listed. I don't know if that's something that goes into the equation, or it's a theory that's not really predominant.
Oh, I think in the short term you may have some differences there, but I think in the long term, at the end of the day, any business needs to make money, right? And whether you are publicly owned, of course, you've got some pressures of the quarterly meeting with the analysts and what have you. But in both cases, at the end of the day, you need to make money. And it's as we mentioned before, it's complicated for retailers. Consumers have changed and have a myriad of options. It's difficult to find a way to be relevant and maintain relevant to those consumers.
Yeah, and lately, I mean, and that's I think why this topic is so relevant. I mean, as you were pointing, we've seen like some very mainstream conflicts that have made it to all the press, not just to us FMCG insiders, but I think that everybody or a lot of people have heard about the famous Carrefour France PepsiCo fallout. Here in Spain as well, there were like some famous fallouts between Mercadona and some FMCG players. Why do these conflicts and how do they happen? How does the volcano erupt?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, you're right. We can read about those conflicts in the press. Not just the examples you mentioned. Unfortunately, there's many, and in many countries, these conflicts happen between a retailer simply because a retailer or a group of retailers and the supplier cannot agree and cannot find agreement over the terms that are acceptable to both parties. And then the result of that sometimes is a conflict. And the conflict means that the supply of a given brand or even a set of brands of a manufacturer will not be available at the store for a given period of time. And these conflicts can take a few weeks, but also sometimes a few months, and even in a few rare cases, they can take several years.
Yeah, interesting. And what impact do they have for the retailer and for the FMCG? Like, they always try to play it down, right? But what's the real impact for them?
The real impact is very negative for everyone. My view is that this conflict mode, if you will, serves nobody's interests. It leads to massive value destruction. And this is not in the interest of the retailer. It's not in the interest of the supplier or manufacturer. And it's also not in the interest of the consumer. I mean, the retailer for sure is going to miss sales, is going to disappoint some of his shoppers or customers that are looking for certain brands or certain products and will not find them. It something that will have lasting impact. And as mentioned before, if that would solve the situation, you would kind of understand it. But what we see is that it doesn't really bring sustainable solutions to the retailer. So that's very unfortunate. For the supplier, it's the same thing. I mean, suppliers, obviously, you see your brand missing from certain stores. That's very painful. Suppliers may see their margins decline, the value of their brands erode, P&Ls being impacted massively. So also suppliers need to react, and they do to that, to also protect their P&Ls. And the implications of that include also drastic cost cutting on the side of the supplier. It can include redirecting investments to more profitable regions or channels. Sometimes suppliers will set up their own B2C distribution channels. They'll cut back on innovation, which is a shame. Invest less in brand development, etc. So, it can really lead to a negative cycle for the manufacturer. And let's not forget, it's also not in the interest of the consumer, because it's very unpleasant when you go to your store and you find some of the key products that you want to buy, some of your favorite brands that are missing. That's really unpleasant. But also it leads to, as I said, to less innovation from brand manufacturers, and that's something that is important to the whole economy, is to drive growth through innovation. It can lead to less customization to the individual needs of a consumer, who are not necessarily the same from one market to the other, as we well know. So it's an agenda where everyone loses, which is a shame.
Yeah, and I think that is something that is sometimes overlooked, right? Exactly what you just mentioned, that the impact is not only linked to that certain moment in time where there is a fallout and that in its isolation, but there are many spillover effects into the long term and into areas that are not super visible. So you basically explained that this is not the way. There are no winners in the case of a fallout, and if you take a long-term view to a cost-cutting approach, that is an ending game. Then obviously that raises the question: what's the alternative approach?
Yeah. Well, there's no simple solution to this, but there is, in my opinion, a strong need for a change of agenda, namely an agenda that benefits all stakeholders. And so that's what I call shifting to a value creation agenda, and that's an agenda that delivers value to all stakeholders.
Mm-hmm. And what are the key elements of a value creation agenda, apart from the fancy name?
Yeah, wow, it's basically an approach where you put the interest of the consumer and the shopper first and central to create sustainable category growth. And if you think about it, that's really what retailers and brands are about, right? It's about providing relevant value to consumers. But sometimes retailers and brand owners get so absorbed by the yearly negotiation cycles that the simple truth is forgotten. Retailers need to give shoppers reasons to visit their stores, and brand owners need to give consumers unique reasons to buy their brands. And if either the retailer or the brand owner fails to do this, the shopper is very quick to react. And winning the hearts of consumers, as we know, has become much more difficult over the years, as consumers have a myriad of options to choose from, both in channels, retail channels or stores, as well as consumer products and brands. And so the good thing is that this challenge of winning the hearts of consumers is common to both retailers and brand owners. So both have a vested interest in working closely together to win the hearts and the minds of the consumer.
Yeah, and obviously that's right, Jacques. But while I think it's super relevant for all parties to continuously remind themselves of that need to focus on category value growth, that is also not new, right? It's not a new concept. So how, in your view, should this still be approached differently versus what you've seen in recent years? And who are the winners? Who are the ones who will really get this right?
Yeah. You're right, David. It's not new, but interestingly, in my short experience as a consultant, my observation is that in many cases, not enough to very little time is spent in this space of value creation. And as you mentioned before, I mean, a lot of time and effort seems to be spent on negotiating the terms for the next year, with short-term deliveries, going from one negotiation to the next one. Suppliers coming in with their agenda, which is, I got these SKUs, I want a list, I want this promotional slot, etc. And too little time is spent on the bigger question, which is how retailers and brand owners can create value for an increasingly demanding consumer. So, as mentioned, it's really going back to a growth agenda. It's finding solutions to drive organic growth with healthy margins for both. As I mentioned, both need to win. So that's what we mean by moving to a value creation agenda. And it's not new, but it's also not a quick fix solution. It's something that requires sustained efforts over a long period of time.
So that is clear, and that basically then takes it away from a 1 year approach and a 1 year negotiation only. I think that also fits the terminology, right? An agenda by default sort of alludes to longer term. Could you elaborate a bit more on then what should the approach be for an FMCG company to really bring this agenda to life?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, David. I mean, this is a long-term approach. So there's a few steps that fit in that approach that CPGs can adopt, and I work on that with my clients. To kind of summarize, I think the first step, importantly, is to define what I call a clear commercial ambition. What that is basically defining what is your company's ambition with customers. What type of role do different channels and different customers have to play in your growth plan? How do you want to grow with customers, et cetera, et cetera? It's really defining that. And that type of clear ambition, commercial ambition, will be a key driver of the commercial culture in the company. It will be driving several strategic choices that the company needs to make. And it'll help determine what capabilities need to be developed and need further focus. And whilst, again, you're saying it's not new, that's true, but my short observation is also that many companies today seem to be unable to clearly articulate what their commercial ambition is, if they have one already. But if they have one, even it's not clear for them, or not easy for them to clearly articulate that. So that's an important first step. Then once you're clear on where you want to go, what your ambition is, the next step is to translate that into clear commercial principles. And these principles simply define how you as a CPG want to create value with your customers. And having a clear set of commercial principles basically helps ensure a consistent commercial approach across different customers and across different markets. And this consistency will help create credibility and trust in the relationship between the CPG and its customers. And today, as we talked about before, in an increasingly transparent trading environment across Europe, this point is crucial. And these principles should therefore be defined and agreed at the most senior level of the company. So for an international CPG, this would be at the group level, because you want that consistency and approach across different markets where you do business. And then Obviously, it needs to be translated at country level into a commercial policy, so that the principles apply to the specifics of each market. So that's an important second step. Establishing your ambition, number one. Number two is translating that into clear commercial principles. And once you've defined where you want to go and how you want to get there, the next point is to define your unique value proposition. What is your unique value proposition? And the value proposition, what is that? Well, it's a simple articulation of the unique way in which your organization is driving value for the customer. So it starts from the customer point of view, from the key challenges and concerns that the customer is trying to solve. And it shows how you, as a supplier, as a CPG, can uniquely help on that agenda. So it explains how you're going to drive growth, where untapped opportunities can be found, and how to capture these opportunities. So it starts from a unique category expertise that the CPG has in its business. It starts from a superior understanding of the consumer and the consumer trends and shopper needs. And now the articulation, just to be clear, the articulation of the value proposition, as I mentioned, I don't mean a very complicated and lengthy presentation or document. In reality, the value proposition should be something very simple, something that anyone in the organization, be it the company CEO, all the way to the salesperson, can very easily articulate and convey to their customer in a simple conversation, delivering the same consistent message throughout the organization. It should be very simple. It is basically answering the question, what value am I bringing to you, dear customer? So it means that in any informal meeting, a CEO should be able to say to his customer, the value I'm bringing to you is 1, 2, and 3, and you will find it's consistently in all of our business plans with you, whether you're in country A or B or C. Now, again, this seems logical. This is not new, as you mentioned, David. But it's also something here that is that you don't necessarily find when you look into this into different companies. Yeah. And then you need to bring this to life through a joint business plan, as I mentioned, with the customer, where this is then becomes from a conceptual thing, it becomes really real in a business plan. You're going to translate it into concrete actions, leading to measurable results. And my point is, this is where the customer or the retailer and the supplier should spend time and effort. That's where they should be working on together, challenging each other to find new ways to drive the growth agenda, unlocking new opportunities, how to create value for the consumer, rather than spending weeks and sometimes months negotiating the level of drift that is finally going to be acceptable to parties.
Yeah. So if we were to summarize that, consistency clearly comes through as a key term. And then you started off with that clear commercial ambition that you need to be able to articulate across levels and across interactions with retailer. Just to summarize that part a bit, because you've talked about value creation. So maybe to bring that to life via opposing it versus what it should not be. So what in your view does a commercial ambition articulated in the right way, how does that sound? What components does that consist of versus where you think many companies get it wrong?
Yeah. Well, first of all, in many cases, that commercial ambition doesn't really exist, because it really answers the question, if you look at your growth plan, what's your growth plan for the coming years? And there's different ways to answer that. And in many cases, CPGs will say, well, it'll come from this category, these consumer trends. We're going to bring this type of innovation, et cetera, which is obviously right and one way of looking at it. An additional way to look at it is to say, and where is this growth? Where is this growth going to come from when it comes to the different channels and the different customers? What role do I want different channels to play in this growth story? What role do I want different customers to play in that growth story? What role do I want to play in those customers' own growth story? What do I want to be as a supplier? What kind of supplier do I want to be? What do I want the customer to say about me? What kind of capabilities am I willing to bring to the customer? If you look at the
sorry to interrupt you, but I guess if you add all those elements up, you want them to translate into a benefit explained in a certain measure. And if I got you right, that measure needs to be category value growth rather than in isolation what it brings to a supplier or the supplier or retailer relationship. Correct?
Absolutely. And so, it says ambition. It's really that. I mean, what is your ambition? If you look at the category and you look at a given customer, what role do you want to play in that category? Do you want to lead that category? Do you want to lead the category growth? Do you want to be the innovator in the category? I mean, these are all different questions. And the point here is it's important to think about that because this really has significant implications, as I mentioned, on the resources that you'll have to have. The example I just gave, what role do you want to play in the category? Well, if you want to lead category growth, well, you got to make sure that you have put the right resources in place to deliver on that.
Yeah. And also, I think it means that FMCG companies really have to look at themselves in the mirror, no, and reflect on the way they've been working for all these years and maybe even do changes in their culture, no? I mean, how are you seeing that? And what type of resistance do you get from FMCG leaders when you show them the mirror?
Yeah, it's not really resistance, to be honest. I think most companies will agree to that. But between agreeing to that and getting there is not always, or is not an easy journey. It's something that requires sustained efforts, as I mentioned, over time. And there are several challenges and hurdles for a company to get there. It's not a quick fix. And so in many cases, it will require a significant cultural shift for the CPG, guided by its commercial ambition that we just talked about. And so this cultural shift will be different for every company depending on where the company sits. But some of the things that it will have in common is first of all what David also just mentioned is adopting a category mindset. Adopting a category mindset is a big one. It means asking yourself the question: are my brand initiatives really driving category growth? And if that's not the case, how can they drive category growth? Because if your brand initiatives are not driving category growth, it's very difficult to drive value for the retailer. And then that increases the chances of staying more at a transactional level with your customer, as opposed to evolving to kind of a strategic relationship. Just think about it. I mean, if you're a customer, you'll probably not be interested in selling more of brand A if this is a zero-sum game that results in selling less of brand B. So it's really, you really want to look and see how this is going to grow the category. But again, this may seem obvious, and as David said in the beginning, this is not new. That's true. But today, many CPGs don't really have a true category mindset yet. Many CPGs have a very brand-centric marketing mindset. and sometimes don't go beyond that. They start with a solid understanding of the consumer, the consumption occasions. They develop brand propositions that provide answers to these identified consumer needs, and that's fine, of course. But they need to go further today, and they need to really go all the way and think about where this consumption is going to take place. What are the key consumption occasions? What is it going to do to the category? What is it going to do to the revenue and profit of the customer? And so
you mentioned something very, very important just now, Jacques, because it's not only about the promise, right? Because already there are probably some FMCG companies hit the right note in terms of presenting their plans on a year-to-year basis through a category value lens. But then it's also about owning up to it, right? And monitoring it. Because for me as a retailer, to buy into a category value growth story, and as we mentioned also before, as opposed to, and I think that's a bit too black and white because the negotiation on terms will always be there, but as a more holistic view towards how you cooperate and engage in a strategic relationship rather than only transactional. In order for me to buy into that as a retailer, I also want a supplier to own up to that story and show proof of concept. So that probably links to, monitoring the extent to which the initiatives that were presented truly result in category value growth, and also owning up to under delivery on that promise in terms of adapting and showing agility or not.
No, absolutely. It's as you say, it's being able to monitor that, to look at that and be able to track that over time and deliver on the promise is key, of course. But it's also looking at the customer needs and the customer's own strategy, and then thinking how your plans, your category, your brands can play a meaningful role in the customer strategy. So it's also thinking customer back, if you will, starting with the customer, and that's another key point, and also I think a mindset, a cultural shift for many CPGs, because that then leads to plans, customer plans that don't start from the brand or the CPG's point of view, but that start with the customer's concerns, the customer's ambition, the customer's strategies, and then show how your brand initiatives will help the customer achieve its own goals. So it's really starting from the customer, and then thinking backwards. And if you follow this approach, if a CPG follows this approach, then each customer plan will be different, because it's going to be tailored to the customer's needs, the customer's strategies, the customer's priorities. And again, here, that's not what you really see when you look in reality in the market. Many CPGs will start their plans with their priorities. I've got these brands to list, or these new products to list. I want these promotional periods that I want to put a focus on, etc. And that does not lead to a differentiated approach by customer. So thinking customer back and starting the plan development with the customer's priorities in mind, I think is a very big cultural shift for many CPGs, basically, to answer Daniel's point of before.
Yeah. And it will also require some internal changes, because obviously some departments think more about brands, probably because they have to, whereas commercial departments, as you said, have to interact more with their customers, right? Which ultimately who are buying from them. How optimistic are you on the future? What developments are you expecting in the next few years?
Very optimistic. When you were in the CPG and retail business, or any business, I think you tend to be optimistic. but I think that we'll get there. I think that retailers and suppliers that will win in the future will be those that continue to relentlessly focus on the consumer and the shopper, and continuously find ways to stay relevant to their consumers and shoppers as they change. This is a massive undertaking, which requires a lot of resources and attention, and hence the retailers and suppliers need to work hand in hand to continue to crack this challenge. So collaboration, I think, is going to be a defining characteristic of winning retailers and suppliers. The conflict model that we too often see today really needs to make way for a collaboration model. The retailer needs to bring his detailed knowledge of the shopper, and the supplier needs to bring his detailed knowledge of the category and how the consumer evolves in it. And suppliers that don't master this, in my opinion, will become less and less relevant for the retailers and will increasingly find themselves in a difficult position. On the other hand, retailers, I think, need to more and more share their extensive knowledge of the shopper through the data that they own and compare notes with the supplier's consumer knowledge. So that's another, if I may, cultural shift, I think, that needs to happen, which is that retailers should stop selling their shopper data to manufacturers. I know that's a big topic. Massive amounts of money today are being charged for the supplier to get access to relevant shopper data from the retailer. But in many cases, the actual use of the data obtained is rather limited. And one of the reasons for that is that the further analysis of the data and capturing the learnings from the data and translating these learnings into concrete actions, that costs a lot of money. And so I think the money is better spent there, though. And so in many cases, I'm a true believer that there's much more to be gained for the retailer and the supplier in activating the retailer data to generate sustainable growth rather than just buying or selling the data.
Yeah, which that opens like a huge other topic that we could talk about around data, retail media, and so on. So maybe without confirming it, but maybe there'll be a part 2 to this. Jack, this has been super interesting and I think super relevant to our audience. So thanks so much for sitting down with us for this hour to discuss all these topics. It's been great.
My pleasure.
David, quite a lot we've talked about. If you like, we can try. I've taken a ton of notes, so maybe we can do like a quick rundown of the main topics that we've covered today.
Yeah.
So
go at it.
Yeah.
Clearly a very rich topic. So even at the very end, we entered a new, very relevant area, which clearly has a huge adjacency with this topic. But if I were to summarize, a huge amount of changes recently, in recent years, impacting retailers, impacting shopper behavior, resulting in consolidation in many ways. But I think the summary of it is that we see retailers act more from a European perspective in their relationship towards suppliers rather than by market. And that requires something from the FMCG suppliers. And you summarize that, Jacques, through mentioning the value creation agenda. And then that consists of many elements. But if I may, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the key areas that you've mentioned there is the ability to truly talk value creation. So what you bring, how that translates into category value growth, your ability to then monitor that and own up to it and translate that into a consistent story. So not just once a year linked to the JBPs, but across years. And not only that level of consistency is required, but also the level of interactions that you have with a retailer, being it top to top, all the way up from the CEO or the group president, as you mentioned, or in market level. So that's what I'd written down. Not sure if you have anything to add, Danny, but
a lot. But I think that if you want to listen more, just re-listen to the podcast again. But I think there's so many nuggets about shopper behaviors. Like I love how like there's been a segment, like more segmentation of the retailers. That's like a huge topic to talk about, to going also from that to going from a conflict mode between retailers and brands to a collaboration model. So it's just a fascinating topic. So I'm really glad that we could hear it. David, thanks so much for daring to co-host that with me. It went better, no? Than maybe you expected.
Yeah, indeed. I wasn't sure that, or I'm still not sure that I'm fit for the job, but I'm very happy to have had the occasion to join you once. And thanks for that.
Well, so to the audience, if you liked the episode, if you didn't like it, please leave your comments. And if it's the first time you listened to it and you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the show. We release every Wednesday and every Saturday, practically, new episodes, which we try to make as relevant as possible to you guys as part of the retail and FMCG industry. Have a great day and see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys.